Yes, hello, my name is Dan Betzel, and I want to thank you again for taking the time out of your day to listen to the next online video workshop. The title of this workshop is Oh My God, Global Economic Armageddon Should You Get Out of the Market? And this workshop came about because I am usually almost on a weekly basis asked by a client or potential prospect about some crisis and what that crisis should mean, how it's going to impact their financial future and their portfolio. So over the years, I've been asked, for example, oh my God, Obama was reelected. Should you get out of the market? Or several years ago, oh my God, Carter was elected. Should you get out of the market? Oh my God, after Black Monday, should you get out of the market? Or Enron is collapsing. Should I get out of the market? 9/11, of course, was a very trying time for all of us, and it changed the world. And I was asked, oh my gosh, should I get out of the market? Um, or TARP. TARP is going to collapse the system. Should you get out of the market? Oh my God, Greece is taking down Europe. Should you get out of the market or at least out of Europe? And Greece seems to be the crisis that just won't go away. We had it 4 or 5 years ago, and again, we had it as late as the summer of 2015. Or do you remember the problems in Cyprus when the banks were closed? Oh my God, Europe is stealing the savings from the banks in Cyprus. Should you get out of the market? Well, here's the bottom line. It's always going to be something. That's the secret. And the people that are espousing these theories that this crisis is going to have some serious negative effect on your portfolio, they're really about spreading fear and using that fear to manipulate and control your mind to make decisions that usually benefits them and not yourself. I want to share with you an email that I received not too long ago from someone named Porter Stansberry, and I just want you to listen to just how scary this is. So his name is Peter Stansberry of Stansberry and Associates Investment Research.
I reference our success and experience with Wall Street's latest crisis because we believe there is an even bigger crisis lurking, something that will shake the very foundation of America.
Wow, that's pretty frightening to think that this next crisis, something that he sees coming, is so amazingly profound and big that it's going to shake the very foundation of America. So it's interesting because what he really talks about in this video is he wants you to purchase his newsletter. It's not cheap, and he uses fear as a way to get you to purchase that newsletter. Well, here's another one of my favorite people, Harry Dent, and it's so interesting because if you look at the two books that he's written, The Great Boom Ahead and then The Great Depression Ahead, I mean, which is it? He's constantly prognosticating about the future. I mean, I don't know if his either one of his books talk about his two funds that lost significant amount of investor funds and then had to close. But nevertheless, these are the people that are out there trying to gain control of your mind using fear and scare tactics. I mean, yes, there are certainly lots of problems in our culture today, in our society. I mean, there are a lot of families that can't even feed themselves. We know that, and it certainly is a problem. Our national debt continues to grow. But what impact is that really going to have on your portfolio? And we're going to take a look at that. There are people that are constantly worried about the collapse of the dollar, and they're running to gold. Here's someone I think you'll recognize who actually has a commercial on his during his daily TV program talking about why investors should go to gold.
I've been trying to buy gold for years. My problem was I didn't have any money, And then I found some money. I actually took some of them out of my 401k originally. I think it's the right time. It's the right time to buy gold. It's actually the right time, when you realize the stupid politicians care more about themselves than they do America. That's when you're like, oh, gold. Yeah, they don't care if they tank the dollar. I believe actually that's part of the idea. That's the only way we can pay off this debt is to inflate the money. They don't care if they print money so fast that it puts, it's like an easy pass to hyperinflation.
Well, we're going to, in this workshop, we're going to take apart some of the things that Glenn Beck has just said, and we're going to see if it holds up to real analysis and to real data. So hang on tight because I think it's going to be a really fascinating and maybe possibly very counterintuitive journey we're going to go on here together. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, our Constitution is under attack. It's people are hoarding guns and ammunition because they're afraid that they won't be able to do so in the future. And there's a backlash, of course, of terrorism that's going on in this country and overseas, and it's all obviously extremely frightening and scary. I mean, even the media, even the left oriented media is saying, "Oh no, we're all socialists now. The perils and promise of the new era of big government." And of course, they're using again fear in these headlines to sell magazines, and they're using the fear of communism because they know that we all grew up in a time where there's a lot of fear about Russia and the Communist Manifesto and what that would mean for the West. So it is really out of control. And there's groups of people who fear the collapse of our entire society, and they're using it very often to use fear as a way to advance their own agenda.
You could accept the fact that this city is headed for a disaster of biblical proportion. What do you mean, biblical? What he means is Old Testament, Mr. Mayor. Real wrath of God type stuff. Exactly. Fire and brimstone coming down from the skies. Rivers and seas boiling. 40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes. The dead rising from the grave. Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together. Mass terror.
So yeah, I'm trying to bring a little levity into it. I'm not trying to be a Pollyanna. We're going to address some of these very real issues here shortly, but it's also, I think, maybe appropriate to stop for a second and just to poke a little bit of fun. The end of the world, dogs and cats living together. Oh my. It's pretty interesting, pretty funny.
In a warehouse east of LA, they're busy building for doomsday. So this is it, huh? This is it. This is the Atlas Survival Shelter, the ultimate man cave. Only it doesn't go anywhere. It's built to be buried deep underground. How many of these things are you selling?
Last year it was like one a month. It went to one a week. And then since December, it went to one a day.
This is one of a growing number of companies now catering to catastrophe, selling real estate from 100,000 to millions of dollars.
This is going to protect us against nuclear, biological, chemical attacks, tornadoes.
It's definitely helped business that an ancient Mayan prophecy predicts this Friday may mark some sort of global expiration date.
The deity Bolon Yokde Ku appears on December 21st of 2012, and he descends and he performs a ritual.
Lots of people are now projecting modern anxieties onto that ancient Mayan date. That the financial system might collapse, or that global warming, or solar flares, or an act of terrorism might take out the nation's electrical grid. People are worried that what's left may look a lot like the recent movie The Road.
How many people do you think are still alive?
In the world, not very many. Doomsday prepping is now such a fad, there are popular reality shows based on it. Of course, plenty of 2012ers are not so negative about the Mayan prophecy. In Mexico, we met astrologer Star Moser, who plans to be at the Mayan ruins Friday, praying to her crystal skull. She believes this will mark the dawn of a new, more enlightened age. Others, not so much.
I'll be in my shelter in Texas, just in case.
Just in case.
Just in case. I'd feel really silly that I went and put a nice shelter in underground and I wasn't in it come December 21st.
Right after that, he plans to come straight back to LA to build more. Good morning, America. David Wright, ABC News, Montefello, California.
I like that idea that it's the dawn of a new, more enlightened age. I think it's just going to be another Friday.
So, yes, did you pick up on this? They're building one a day, and they're catering to the catastrophe market. Well, the beautiful thing about equities and markets is they're very, very forward looking, and all of this fear and all of this possibility is already factored in. So now let's turn our attention to really getting into the meat of the data, and let's see what's really going on, not in an emotional perspective, but actually using the hard data. I think you'll find this absolutely fascinating. So if I could tell you, if I could have told you back in 1900 exactly which years were going to be years of economic expansion and which which years were going to be years of economic contraction, what would you have done with that information? And this graph in front of you is fascinating. So the red lines that are below, the main line, they represent years of economic contraction. For example, you see 1945 and the Great Depression. And the blue lines are the periods of economic expansion. So, what would you do if you had this information back in 1900? I know what I think I would want to do. I want to invest in the market in those years when there was economic expansion, and I would not want to be in the market during the periods of the red line or the economic contraction. Well, let's see what would have happened if you had done that. So this is actually fascinating. So the U.S. equity returns during the recession years, so 1900 to 2010, just those recessionary years, the years of the red line, during the real GDP growth during those years was negative 4.37, right? It's contracting. But the real equity return during those years was 11.27. Now, if you factor in all years, the real GDP growth is 3.31 and the real return equity is 8.07. So in other words, if you had decided not to invest during those recession years, you would have actually been doing the exact opposite of what you should have been doing. So let's look again, keep going here. So what would you think? What would be the intuitive answer to this question? So this map in front of you represents, the majority of countries in the world, and the countries that are the most free, they're like in the green colors. And then as we become to somewhat free, they're more of a yellowish and brown color, and then the orange and reds are those countries that are least free. So if you had to pick which countries to invest in, where would you want to invest? I mean, it's absolutely common sense. Of course I want to invest in those countries that are the most free, and I want to stay away from those countries that are the least free. But what would that have done for your portfolio if you didn't really have a globally diversified portfolio? Well, you would have been, once again, had made the wrong decision, even though it made a lot of sense. It's counterintuitive, but the top line of this graph, it represents the returns, equity returns, from those countries that are least free. And then you can see the lower two lines that are pretty much tracking together in tandem represent the middle and the most free countries. So when you put together a portfolio, you have to use real data and not just what seems to make sense based on your gut. Let's look, even if it had been, so that's in developed markets, it's the same thing in emerging markets. Isn't that fascinating? So, low GDP growth does not predict low future stock returns. Now, we know that GDP growth is extremely important, and it's linked to all kinds of things like lower infant mortality, better education, longer life expectancy. It's linked to all kinds of things, and I'm not saying that GDP isn't important for the society that you live in. But here's one thing it's not linked to. It is not linked. It cannot be used to predict future stock returns. Does that make sense? So if you had known which of those years were going to be recessionary, and you had used that as a basis to invest, you would have actually done worse than if you just had been invested in a globally diversified portfolio for all the years in question.
But a very serious economic situation. Yesterday, the Government Accountability Office, the nonpartisan investigative arm of Congress, released its annual audit of the U.S. government. The report covers the fiscal years 2011 and 12. The conclusion of the report is this, quote, absent policy changes, the federal government continues to face an unsustainable fiscal path. Let me repeat that. Absent policy changes, the federal government continues to face an unsustainable fiscal path. If the feds do not stop the wild spending and do not reform Medicare and Social Security, the U.S. dollar will collapse. That means that all of our savings, all of our investments, our homes, and everything else will blow up before our eyes.
Now, if that's not fear-mongering, I'm not sure what is. So that means, as he said, that all of your savings, investments, your home, and everything else will blow up before your eyes. Well, let's look at some more data and see if that really stands up to the scrutiny of real data analysis. So, lot of clients are very, very concerned about which political party or which president is in the White House. And so we did an analysis study that's very fascinating, and we asked ourselves, well, what is the market growth of wealth during the various presidential terms? And we're going to go back. We'll go back to 1926, and we're going to look and see what the market did. So, red, Calvin Coolidge is a Republican, and he was in office from 27 to 29, and a dollar invested in the S&P 500 would have grown by the end of his term to $2.09. Not bad. First Republican president in our analysis here. Well, then Herbert Hoover. Well, this was a very, very difficult time, right? This is the Great Depression. So, what happened to a dollar that was invested on the first day he came to office in March 29? A dollar would have gone down to 28 cents. Wow, that is certainly painful to see. Then we have Franklin D. Roosevelt. Now, Franklin D. Roosevelt, a lot of people would agree that he perhaps maybe is one of the most liberal uh, presidents we've had, and his some of his policies people may or may not agree with. But look what happened to the market. An S&P 500, $1 grew to 461, and look at the crisp 9 to 10 stock index. A dollar would have grown to 28.36. So pretty amazing, isn't it? Harry S. Truman, a dollar would have S&P a dollar invested in the S&P 500 would have grown to 310 from 45 to 52. Dwight Eisenhower, Republican again, the S&P 500 a dollar would have gone to 304. John F. Kennedy, a dollar to 139. Of course, he only served a partial term. Lyndon B. Johnson, 63 to 68, a dollar would have grown to 166. Richard Nixon, a dollar would have decreased to 91 cents. And of course, if you were in the crisp 9 and 10, a dollar would have gone down to 37 cents. It was a difficult time. Gerald Ford, a dollar would have grown to 150. You can see the various indices, what would have happened to them. Crisp 9 and 10, a dollar would have grown to 203. Jimmy Carter, a lot of people say Jimmy Carter was an ineffective president. It was the misery years with very high interest and mortgages at a very, very high rate. But nevertheless, look what the market did even during that period, which the Iran Contra crisis and all those things that were going on. A dollar would have grown to $1.55. Ronald Reagan, $1 to 380 from 1981 to 1989. George Bush, George H.W. Bush, S&P 500, $1 would have grown to 179. Bill Clinton, $1 to 356 in the S&P 500. George W. Bush, $1 would have decreased to 79 cents during his tenure as president. Now, Barack Obama, we've seen amazing stock market gains during his period of tenure in office. The S&P 500, a dollar would have gone to 259. The crisp 9 and 10, a dollar would have gone to 336. So what does this say if we put all of this together? It's actually quite fascinating. So we can see that during this period, if you had invested $1 in 1926, the S&P 500 would have grown to $4,760. The FAMA, the crisp deciles 6 through 10 would have grown to $18,374. It's pretty amazing here what's happened to the market. So here we go again. The FAMA French U.S. Large Value Research Index would have grown to $20,430. The crisp deciles 9 and 10 to 32,000. And look at this. $1 invested in 1926 in the FAMA French U.S. Small Value Research Index would have grown to 208,000. Well, let's put it all together now and see, does it really matter who's in office? Who is which party's occupying the White House as it pertains to your investments. So the GOP White House, nominal returns from 1927 to December 2014. They were in control of the White House for 43.17 years. They have a total return of 671%. Okay, it's a nice annualized return of 4.85. Not that bad. Now let's look at the when the Democrats controlled the White House. Nominal returns for the same period. They controlled the White House for 45.83 years, and the returns are a staggering 52,590% for an annualized return of the market of 14.65% while a Democrat was in the White House. So I show this to people, and they're like, okay, that's fine, but it's really not the president that controls the economic policy. It's the Congress, or it's the House. So let's see what the data will show us in regards to that question. So Investment News said back on November 11, 2012, avast, Congress operates like pirates. Just like high sea robbers, lawmakers have figured out a way to hold us for ransom. Well, let's look at that in more detail, because as investors, we can only flinch often on a daily basis, watching our representatives play on our worst fears. So let's look at the market growth of wealth during the various House terms. So, from January 27 to 32, we had a GOP or Republican control of the House, and we can see this was a very difficult time. In the S&P 500, a dollar would have gone down to 71 cents. The crisp 9 and 10 percentiles, a dollar would have gone down to 27 cents. Tough time. Now, the Democrats got control of the House in January of 33, and they controlled the House up to 1946. And you can see that at S&P 500, $1 would have grown to $4.62. The GOP had control of the House back in 47 to 48. You can see a dollar went to $1.12. And then I don't know if a lot of people realize that how long the Democrats have controlled the House, from 1949, all the way to December 1994. And $1 invested in January of 1949 would have grown to $199.74 by December of 1994. Then the Republicans regained control of the House from 95 to 2006, and we can see that $1 in the S&P 500 grew to 380. You can look at the numbers here on the graph. The small value, a dollar grew to 910. So these are great years of significant gain in the market. Democrats back from 2007, 2010, and you can see what happened here. We see a S&P 500, a dollar going down to 97 cents. The GOP gets control of the House from January 11 to 2014. And we can see that $1 has grown to $1.78. So there's been a massive explosion of wealth during this time period. And let's look at that and see what this looks like. So the S&P 500, a dollar would have grown to 4,760, just like in the other slide we looked at. And we can see that the crisp deciles 6 through 10 to 18,374. And the FAMA French US large value to 20,000, the deciles 9 and 10 to 32,000, and the FAMA French US small value research index over $208,000. And so it's fascinating. But let's put this all together. And does it matter who's in control of the House, Republican or Democrat? Now we looked already at the role of the president and determined that it wasn't dispositive in determining what the market returns were going to be. Let's see if there's anything we can glean from which party's controlling the House. So the GOP controlled the House for 24 years during this period of 1927 to 2014, and there was a nice rate of return of 309%. But the annualized return would be about a little over 6%. Not bad. Let's now look at the Democrat. When the Democrat House, when they controlled the House for 64 years, they had a total return of 99,132%. It's mind boggling. And the annualized return was 11.38%. So it's really fascinating. I showed this to a client. He said, "Well, if that's the case, then why don't we just want to invest when the Democrats control the House?" Well, why would we want to give up the 5% or so that we would be getting when the Republicans control the House? What this is really showing us, it's not really showing us which particular party is better. What it's showing us is it doesn't matter. That your returns, there's no correlation between which party is controlling the White House and which party is controlling the House of Representatives. Well, then a client said to me, it's not the president, it's not the House, it's really the Senate, because the Senate that's the real governing body that really makes policy and sends their bills to the House for consideration. Okay, whether that's true or not, I thought a good point. Let's do the same analysis and try to determine what impact the control of the House would have on how you are investing for your future, for yourself and your family. So, what's the market growth of wealth during Senate terms? Let's go through the same thing that we've been going through with the White House and the House. We can see that the GOP controlled the Senate from 27 to 32, and you can see that a dollar decreased down to 71 cents. The S&P 500, the crisp 9 and 10, a dollar down to 27 cents. The Democrats controlled the Senate from 33 to 46, and a dollar rose to 462 in the S&P 500. But look at this: in the crisp 9 and 10 deciles, a dollar grew to $38.62 during that same time period. GOP 47 to 48, a dollar to $1.12. Democrats controlled the Senate from 49 to 52, a dollar to $2.30. The GOP regained control in 53 to 54, a dollar to $1.51. The Democrats controlled the Senate from 1955 to 1980, and the S&P 500, $1 invested in the S&P 500 would have grown to $9.97. And if you had invested in the Fama and French Small Value Fund, a dollar during that same period would have grown to $49.20. Amazing, staggering. GOP 81 to 86, a dollar to $2.35. The Democrats regained control in 87 to 94, a dollar to $2.45. The Republicans from 95 to 2000, $1 would have grown to $3.19. Democrats January 2001 to December 2002, a dollar would have decreased down to 69 cents in the S&P 500. The GOP regained control in 203 to 206, and S&P 500 $1 to $1.73. And Democrats had control of the Congress from 2007 to December 2014, and here we see a dollar in the S&P 500 would have grown to 172. So let's put this all together as we've been doing, and first look at the returns, which should become very familiar to you by this point, because they are the same for the period, right, between 1926 and the end of 2013. We can see what the S&P 500 would have done or did do, what the crisp decile 6 and 10 at 18,000, the Fama French U.S. large value at 20,430, the crisp deciles 9 and 10, 32,000, and of course the Fama French U.S. Small Value Research Index over 208,000. So, during the years that the GOP controlled the Senate, we had a nice return of 1,040% during those 26 years, or an annualized return of 9.81. And when the Democrats controlled the Senate for 62 years, we had a very nice rate of return of 35,542. And we had an annualized return of almost the same, 9.94. So what is this telling us? It says that, the portfolio doesn't care which party is or was in power. That the returns don't come from the person sitting in the White House or the party that controls our Congress. The returns are coming from somewhere else. So hopefully this will take the fear of politics out of your portfolio decision. But of course, this raises a lot of questions. I had a client ask me, it's really not, you're right, it's not the president, it's not the House, it's not the Senate, it's actually tax policy. It's tax policy that drives the market. So okay, let's stop for a second and let's look at tax policy. Let's look at income tax policy and see what impact that has on the market. Remember Taxmageddon not too long ago? That was the fear of the day that the media was scaring us with. So here's the question. Do tax rates have any effect on market returns? I'm going to show you a slide that's kind of busy. So I'm going to stop here for a few seconds and try to explain it to you. It's not a difficult slide. It's just pretty busy, and hopefully you'll be able to glean some great insights from it. But here it is. So here's the question. So it's asking ourselves, what was the top marginal tax bracket for the years between 1927 and 2014? And each of these blue dots on this graph represents a specific year between 27 and 2014 inclusive. So let's look at a couple here. Here they are. So do you find 1931? In 1931, the top income tax bracket was 25%, and we had a market return of negative 43%. Now find 1933. And you'll see at 1933, our top tax bracket was 63%, and we had a market return of 53.97. Counterintuitive, amazing. Look at 1954. Our top tax bracket was 91%, and we had a return of 49.98% that year. So, historically speaking, our tax rates are not that high. But the fascinating aspect is that regardless of the top tax bracket, we can see that the market is doing its job. So in 1931, when you would think with a very low top tax bracket, the market should be doing very well, and it wasn't. In 1954, with a top tax bracket of 91%, we have an amazing return of 49.98%. So look at 2013. Top tax bracket 39.6, and we have a very nice return of 35.17%. So what this chart is showing us is there is very, very, very slight correlation between the top individual tax bracket and the market returns. There's not a strong correlation, a very, very weak correlation. Never can say no correlation, but it's very weak. So if we were to look at the top tax brackets, where the top tax bracket was greater than 50%, that was 50 years of the total 27 to 2014 that we're looking at, we would have received an average annual return of 12.58. Now, during those years, those 38 years where the top tax bracket was less than or equal to 50%, total of 38 years, we would have had a slightly reduced rate of return of 11.91. So what does this tell us? It tells us that the market factors in the income tax rate, and that it is not dispositive of what the market's going to do. Very counterintuitive. It should hopefully be very freeing and allow you not to focus on those aspects of portfolio management that are not important. Why are they not important? Because they have no correlation to what we're trying to do, and that is to create wealth for you and your family. Well, people tell me, it's not income tax, it's really capital gains. It's capital gains tax that really impacts, my portfolio and the market. Well, okay, let's look at capital gains taxes then as well. So it's a very similar chart. Each blue dot represents a year, and look at this. It's very interesting. In 1931, we had a top capital gains tax rate of 12.5%, and we had a return of negative 43. In 1954, we had capital gains rate of double 25%, and we had a return of 49.98, almost 50%. 1933, we have a top capital gains rate of 12.5, and we have a return of 53.97. So you can see there seems to be no correlation. Look at 1931 and 1933. It has something to do other than just capital gains tax policy. And 2013, we have a top capital gains rate of 20% and a return of 35.17. So, low tax brackets, high tax brackets. The truth to take away from this is the markets really don't care much. So once again, we can see there's a low correlation between tax income or capital gains and the returns that we're going to get in the market. So here's the capital gains. If the top capital gains rate is greater than or equal to 25%, we have 49 years, and we had a market return of 14.05 as average annual return. Now in those years, 39 years, where the top cap gains rate was less than 25%, we have a return of 11.91, which is counterintuitive on one level, because you would think that if we had lower top capital gains rate, we would then be able to encourage the purchase of equities and the market would respond favorably. But in reality, on another level, it's really the cost of capital story, because of course the market already factors these conditions in. So I hope that this is showing you so far that we're able to take the politics out of our portfolio design. We're also able to take the tax impact out of the necessary considerations when we are considering how to best design and to monitor our portfolio. Now, here's the bottom line: uncertainty happens all the time. And I want you to remember that. And I want to show you two clips. And it's fascinating because the two clips appeared in an ad. And listen and look carefully, because they look so similar, even though they're separated by quite some time. And they're both using fear to talk to you. In the first ad, it talks about the horrible storm Katrina, and in the second clip, it talks about Sandy. But you'll see that how similar they are, and how they just keep recycling the same things over and over again. So here you go.
Gallon of gas, a Katrina-type storm, the economy. By the way, who measures the economy?
Okay, that was Katrina, gas issues. And now let's look at the next clip.
Gas, a Sandy-type superstorm, or a disastrous oil spill. The economy. By the way, who measures the economy?
So wow, pretty fascinating, right? It's pretty much the same story being repeated, just substituting the crisis of the day, the crisis of the week, the crisis of the month from what had been the previous crisis. Now, we don't know what the next crisis will be, but I can tell you this: there will be one. But the beauty is, we don't need to know what the next crisis is, because if you have a globally diversified portfolio, that it's being managed correctly, that it's being managed with knowledge that these crises will come and that we will be able to navigate them. So remember these that remind us that certainty is already factored in, and that we're always going to have periods of uncertainty. Here we go. The New Deal, November 2008. Oh, 2009, we have paging Dr. Obama, this is going to hurt, just relax, 2009. America's Vulnerable Economy, The Economist, November 2009. The World Economy, Sticky Patch or Meltdown, June 18, 2011. So, Time, What Recovery, June 24, 2011. So, the idea is that the media will never stop. Why will the media never stop? Well, they're not going to stop because fear sells. So, what if you knew, for example, between January 2009 and September 2014 that food stamps were going to increase from 32 million to 46.5 million, and you knew that welfare spending was going to skyrocket through the roof during this same period of time, and our national debt is going to continue during this period of time to continue to rise, and unemployment was going to continue to increase. If you knew all of this in advance, right, during this period, during the period of January 2009 to December 2014, if you knew all of this in advance, what would you have done? My guess is many of us would say, well, I'm going to get out of the market. But if you had, this is what would have happened. So the growth of $1 between January 2009 and 2014. So the fama in French, $1 grew to 2.59. The S&P, right, 2.79. And the crisp deciles 9 through 10, 336. So if you had stayed out of the market, you would have not participated in this growth during this period, during this five-year period. So what does this teach us? There are things that we can control and things that we can't control. And we need to focus on those things that we can control, and the things that we can't, we need to let them go. There are also many things that appear to be important in our portfolio design, which in reality are not. Not if we're long-term investors. If you're a day trader, if you're trying to beat the market, you're trying to do stock picking, market timing, track record investing, and I guess those crises of the day are important. But for prudent, evidence-based investing, long-term investing, those issues are not significant on any level. So we need to control what we can control. So I hope you enjoy the next brief little segment here.
I think it's interesting that you have a show on tonight about America being overweight, because losing weight is simple. You eat less, you move more. And investing is simple too. You own equities long term, greatest wealth creation tool to mankind. You diversify and you rebalance on high and lows back to targets. But everybody gets fat and nobody makes money in the market. So long term, don't try to create these doom and gloom scenarios. Nobody knows when that's going to happen or if it will happen.
So the bottom line is we don't need to listen to the fear mongers. We need to focus on what we can control. What can we control? The reality is we can control how much we invest. We can control how much risk we design into our portfolio. We can control whether we own all 19 distinct asset categories in a globally diversified portfolio. We can be totally diversified and we can rebalance. If we do all of those things, then we know that our portfolio has been designed to weather whatever the next crisis will be. So let's look at the performance of $1 million from January 2000 to December 2014. It's actually quite fascinating if you look at this graph. So the U.S. Consumer Price Index, well, in order just to stay ahead of inflation, we know that we would have needed to grow the $1 million to 1.395. And if we had just invested in a conservative portfolio, a very conservative portfolio, income and growth, and net of all fees, and a conservative portfolio, this income and growth portfolio would be 75% in fixed income and 25% in equity. It would have grown from 1 million to 1.544 million. What if we had a balanced portfolio? And a balanced portfolio is a portfolio that is 50% in equities and 50% in fixed income. Well, it would have almost doubled our income. The $1 million would have grown to 1.966677, almost $2 million, almost doubled. Well, what if we were in long-term growth? Long-term growth would be 75% in the equity market and 25% in the fixed. Our $1 million would have grown to over 2.3 million. And if you would have been able to withstand the fluctuation and the standard deviation in an aggressive portfolio, your $1 million would have grown to $2.625 million. So, regardless of what had gone on in the recent years with the politics, with the tax laws, and with the crisis of the day, the portfolios keep working as designed. So, why is this? I mean, how can this be? Well, of course, this is the aggressive portfolio. What would have happened if you were invested in the aggressive portfolio? The $1 million would have grown over five over $5 million from the period of 1992 to 2014, and it's fascinating. But it's actually beating the own aggressive growth benchmark. So pretty fascinating stuff. It's the cost of capital. What this means is that you're being compensated during these periods of uncertainty because there's a little more risk involved. Now that risk can be defined and contained somewhat by portfolio design, but cost of capital would tell us that that the the more risky the time or the more risky the stock that you are investing in, the greater the potential return. So also tells us that market returns come from entrepreneurs. They don't come from the House, they don't come from the Senate, they don't come from the White House, they don't come from tax policy. They come from entrepreneurs, the people, the great Americans who are creating ever new technologies and ever new markets and are pushing the entire standard of living forward. Because here's what we have to know, that when everything is uncertain, as it often seems around us, the other side of that coin is that anything is impossible. So, fear is natural. I understand it. Everyone is confronted and faces something fearful at many times in our lives. But armed with the facts, this is my belief, that armed with the facts we've talked about today, we can face this fear with confidence and not allow the fear to be used to motivate us, to manipulate us, to make bad decisions for ourselves and our family, but good decisions for people that sell gold funds and for people that sell books and for people that sell newsletter subscriptions. So that would be my hope and my goal for you. So, thank you so much for listening again, and I would love to hear any comments you have, any feedback. Feel free to email me, to call me. I would love to talk to you. I want to now spend the next couple minutes, just a few more minutes here, going through the 20 must answer questions. You can find them in the back of your workbook. I go through them every workshop that I give, and why do I do that? It's because there's so much information out there. There's so much that it's impossible for any one person to really know it all. But here is my belief that if you know the right questions to ask, you'll be able to find your way forward, you'll be able to find the right advisor to work with, or you'll be able to figure out the answers to what you need to know. I call these the 20 must answer questions for your journey toward investing peace of mind. So get a sheet of paper and write either yes or no, Y or N, or circle in the notebook if you have it in front of you. And now you need to know a couple things before we get going here, is that each question has to be answered clearly yes or no. There's no like, well, maybe 90% of the time. If it's 90% of the time, then you have to answer the question no. Okay, fair enough? And the purpose of this is not to make you feel bad, it's just to give you a great place to know where to begin with finding answers to these important questions that are going to impact you, your family, and of course your portfolio. So, question number one: have you discovered your true purpose for money? That which is more important than money itself. Now, we all know, at least we all say, that money is not the most important thing in life. But if it's not, what is? And you, are you able to clearly articulate that in just a few words? Perhaps even one word. If you do, say yes. If you don't, say no. Are you invested in the market? Number two is really pretty straightforward, and most people can answer yes to this because if you have a 401k at work or a pension plan or even a personal investment, you're probably invested in the market. Number three, do you know how markets work? I talk to investors all the time and they have money in the market, but when it comes to understanding the underlying dynamics of how a market works, they don't know. I think it would be very disconcerting to have a portion of your wealth invested in a way that you don't really understand. And I'd encourage you to, if you don't know how markets work, that you find out. Have you defined your investment philosophy? We all know that whether it's religion, education, science, or history, your philosophy is imperative to making decisions that are right for you. So there's basically two different philosophies. One is that markets work, that through the process of supply and demand, the market sets a price that's impossible for any one individual to consistently predict or forecast what's going to happen next. We call that the free market. Like Adam Smith said, it sets the best possible price and takes all the plans and knowable information and prices into the pricing system today. This is basic. This is the basic philosophy and foundation for the free enterprise system in America today. The other investment philosophy is that the markets fail. In other words, that the markets consistently and predictably misprice goods and services, and that a brilliant individual or a brilliant committee can tell you what the real price is, and it can maximize economic or individual wealth. We personally reject that philosophy, but it's very important that you understand what your philosophy is because you want to work with a person who shares your philosophy. So if you believe in stock picking and market timing and track record investing, then you need to find someone who has that same philosophy as you. Have you identified your personal risk tolerance? Question number 5. And I don't mean I'm an aggressive or I'm a conservative investor. You really need to make a cognitive and conscious decision about how much and what type of risk you want in your portfolio. If you don't, then it's impossible to have any real sense of peace of mind. Do you know how to measure diversification in your portfolio? Do you know how well or how poorly you are diversified? Question number 6, pretty straightforward, yes or no. Do you consistently and predictably achieve market returns? So answering yes to this question requires, not only some historical knowledge of the market and actual market rates of return, but also some knowledge about the benchmarks you want to look at as you build your portfolio. Most people really don't know how the markets have done historically, and they have no idea whether they've achieved market returns or they've underperformed. So, unfortunately, statistically, the vast majority of investors underperform market rates of return. Do you know if you have? If you do, then you can answer yes. If you don't know how you've performed, then of course you have to say no. Question number 8 is a great question. Have you measured the total amount of commissions and costs in your portfolio? So you might be shocked with some of the internal costs that are being, hate to use the word hidden, but are not so easily discernible as you might like. Question number 9 is pretty straightforward. Do you know where you fall on the Markowitz efficient frontier? So Dr. Markowitz won a Nobel Prize in 1990, and he said that you can actually identify portfolio volatility by looking at historic rates of return and asset correlation, and then you could use modern statistics and analysis to create a portfolio that would be efficient, that it would optimize return for a given amount of risk. That's a lot to take in, and if that didn't make any sense to you, it's totally fine. That as we move forward, or if you go to participate in some of the other online workshops, that'll become clearer to you. Question number 10 is straightforward. When it comes to building your investment portfolio, do you know exactly what you're doing and why? So this question takes us halfway through the first 10 of the 20 must-answer questions. I just want to stop here for a second and tell you, once again, don't feel bad if you're not getting a lot of these questions right. The idea isn't to show you that you don't know the answers. The idea is to show you what steps you need to focus on as you move forward to educate yourself, so you will be able to make very good investment decisions for you and your family. Question 11. Are you working with a financial coach versus a financial planner? A financial coach helps you focus on answering questions like these that we're talking about today, and avoid some of the issues that are often associated with a traditional financial planner. Question 12. Do you have a customized lifelong game plan to guide all of your investing and spending decisions? So we're talking about a way of looking at everything that's valuable to you, your life's goals, your assets, whatever it may be, and actually planning out what you want to do with your life and your money, so that when it comes to the end of your life, you will be able to say that you've lived a life without regret. Do you have an investment policy statement? It's pretty clear. Either you do or you don't. We think it's absolutely vital that you do have one. Have you devised a clear-cut method for measuring the success or failure of your portfolio? Some people open up their quarterly statement. If the account's gone up, it's a success. If it's gone down, it's not working. Is that the best way to determine whether or not your portfolio is functioning as designed? Do you have a measurement tool to know if your portfolio is doing what it's supposed to do? Do you fully understand the implications in diversification in your portfolio and how to build it in? Some people just think if they have a lot of stuff that their portfolio is diversified. Question 16. Do you have a system to measure portfolio volatility? So how much risk is inside of your portfolio? Question 17. Are you aware of the costs associated with purchasing commission-based products? Let's face it, commission-based products require trading to generate the commissions, which encourages speculating with your money to support the commission industry. Just need to be aware of it, whether that works for you or not. Do you know the 3 warning signs that you may be speculating with your money versus prudently investing it? We didn't talk much about it. We mentioned it in this particular video, but if you were to go back and watch the Separating Myths video, it comprises a very, very large part of that particular workshop. But are you stock picking? Are you market timing? And are you track record investing? If you participate in any of those, then you are speculating with your money and not prudently investing it. Question number 19. Can you identify the cultural messages and personal mindsets about money that destroy your peace of mind? Often our individual mindsets and beliefs about money are not things we developed as adults. Many come from our childhood, perhaps as early as the age 5, and some of them are very, very helpful and protective, and some of them are actually not helpful at all. They're not empowering beliefs. You should be able to look at your beliefs about money and decide whether that is an empowering belief you want to keep or that's a belief that no longer suits you and you want to change it. Now, the last question, which is really probably the only question you have to answer yes in order to begin making progress on your journey toward financial peace of mind, is: are you ready to shift your personal experience of money and investing from a scarcity mode to an abundance mode where you can live your life rather than obsess about your assets? So I've often seen that people suffering from portfolio losses and lack of diversification and excess costs feel that they are in a state of scarcity. Not enough time, not enough money. Not enough investing peace of mind, not enough clarity, not enough focus and capability to move forward into the future. Of all these 20 must answer questions, this is the only one you have to answer yes to begin making progress forward. So, if you're ready to shift your personal experience of money and investing from scarcity to abundance, then check yes and please get in contact with me. So, I want to thank you again for taking time today to work through this workshop with me. I hope you found the information useful. I hope that you are able to walk away saying, a lot of the things that I worry about, like who is in the White House, who controls Congress, tax policy, the crisis of the day, those are all important things. I'm not saying they're not important in order to build a society that we all want to live in, but what they are not dispositive of, what they do not indicate for us, is how well my portfolio will function during these periods of crisis and the various other issues that are impacting our daily lives. I hope that you'll have a greater sense of mind knowing that if you do have a well-diversified portfolio that's been constructed properly, you know your risk, your 1-year downside risk, then you know that you can go confidently into the face of whatever the next crisis may be. Thank you again. I look forward to talking with you on the next workshop. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.